Welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. I'm here with Tyler Hoover. Tyler is the host or co-host of the Anti-Hero podcast. She's also heavily involved with Counterculture Inc, Refracted, which you might know through Refracted Wolf Apparel. You're kind of a man of many hats, also a current law enforcement officer. You were very gracious and had me on your show not too long ago, and it was I really enjoyed the trip and the conversation with you guys. I'm always appreciative when people give me their time, and so thanks for giving me your time today, Tyler. I'm anxious to talk with you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And that was a great episode. Me and Brent were like kids in a candy store with the questions. Just that brings me to another point. And then Brent would be like, "Do you have anything else?" I'd be like, "Actually, I have one more question." So going from topic to topic, man, it was fun.
Yeah, well, it was a good time. The conversation went a lot of different places, and I really appreciated that you guys were trying to get some insights from different angles. And that's what I really like about the show that you guys do together, is that it hits a lot of different angles and a lot of different people. So I definitely do want to talk about sort of the evolution of that show and kind of what you guys are doing, the mission behind it. I've had Brent on, kind of got his take, but I know the thing originally started with you. So I want to get back to I want to talk about the origin story. But before we get into any of that, maybe let's just get into a little bit about who Tyler Hoover is, because I've picked it up along the way from listening to your episodes and all that stuff. But you got you got a history in the military. You've got a history now in law enforcement, and I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff in there. Again, being a man of many hats. So I'll let you take it wherever you want to. You can go back as far as you want, and you can take it any direction you want, but you might just have to be patient with me because I might time you out for questions or whatever along the way. So ready, set, go, dude.
Yeah, so I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, which is southwest Virginia near the West Virginia border. I sucked at school, did awful in high school, did a year of community college, was failing, I hated it, and then I just got this hair up my ass to go joined the military in 2007 during the surge to Iraq. So I joined, deployed with the 82nd Airborne as an infantryman to Baghdad. Got home, finished my contract, got out, went to college for a degree I don't use, and then joined the police academy. And I've been a cop in Central Florida, a street cop for about 10 years now.
Okay, so when did you know you wanted to be a cop? Or was that kind of like, I got to do this because I don't think I can do anything else? Or was there something really driving you there? Like, how does that start?
I always knew I wanted to do something in the entertainment business, but my dad was a retired cop. So I kind of always knew, like I did ride-alongs with him all the time. It's all I ever knew was how to be a cop. So I kind of realized that I was going to end up doing it. But man, I was in bands. I played music, and like at one point I thought maybe the band's gonna make it, and then I was sick of being poor, and I was like, I'm joining the Army. So, but yeah, kind of always knew I was gonna be a cop. But like I said, I had this desire and this drive to be in the entertainment field. At the time I just hung it up because I wanted a career. So flash forward to now, I would take a lot of those things like branding and marketing and all that stuff that I learned being and playing in bands, and now I'm able to kind of utilize it with the core being law enforcement, military as a content.
That's so interesting. I mean, I knew there was a music connection there because of the things you guys do through Counterculture and what I see and hear you doing on this show. But let's talk about that a little bit. So bands, like what type of bands we're talking about? Like metal bands?
Oh,
like
yeah.
Rock
really,
bands?
like heavy hardcore punk metal. Okay. Yeah, loud guitars, the works.
Do you play all the instruments or just one or what?
No, I played the guitar. Okay. No. Me and Brent every now and again pick up our guitars and we jam. I always joke with Brent, like, we need to start a band, an anti-hero band.
I feel like I miss my calling too. Like, I love music. I was involved in it at a young age as well, and I really loved it. But it was tough to balance that with the other things I was doing, whether it was being a student, being an athlete, and whatever else. And ultimately, I loved it, but I didn't love it as much as I loved football and wrestling and track and field and, having extra time, because it was always pulling me away. But I never tried to make a living at it. However, I have some friends that did. Some were actually very, very successful at it and others weren't. And so I watched that dichotomy of like how you can be successful, and then also how you can go broke and be sleeping on couches for a really, really long time and going from one girlfriend to the next because they just don't want to put up with your shit anymore, constantly asking mom and dad.
The band's gonna make it, babe. The band's gonna make it.
You get that
I remember
one.
my music teacher in high school told me, or told the class, if you cannot live without your musical instrument, you can try. And you can try to make it as a professional musician, AKA that thing is an appendage of you. Like, you can't live without it. If it's just a hobby, do not try to make it as a profession of music. And I was like,
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so that brings in the marketing piece and the merchandising piece and things. So the guys that made it didn't do any of that. The guys that didn't make it were always trying to do that as well. So, where there was hats and t-shirts and stickers and whatever else, they got very good at this. And they also got good with like the photography, like the editing. And for me, this was long before social media. So they were out constantly doing, posters and they were having to, go to bars and they were having to go places and try and promote their stuff. They had to make CDs. They had to put those out. And whatever else, they were hustling constantly.
A lot of DIY, do-it-yourself type stuff.
For sure, before, marketing is what marketing is now. So that plays into the next stuff. So, all right. So currently an officer in Central Florida. What's the job like now for you? You're a patrol guy and special units. What are you doing out there?
I don't do many specialized units anymore. The last one I got out of was street crimes, because we had to work a lot of nights on street crimes naturally, and we decided to do this live show that we do with Antihero, and it was going to be every Thursday night, and I was like, I can't have every Thursday night off, and I was like, all right, so I went and I went back to day shift, so now I'm regular patrol. I work day shift. Still a good time. I still work the hood, but it's a little bit slower pace as far as like, I remember when I'd be doing social media during briefs, like we're, tracking down this, this stolen vehicle and we're going to do this takedown. And I'm like posting and, trying to make them both work. And so, now it's, I respond to calls. I could go out and be proactive if I want, but I have a lot of downtime to work on my businesses.
Good. Okay. So a lot of cops have side gigs. Yours is a little bit interesting. However, we're starting to see a lot of cops do podcasts, and not like yours. Yours is different, but it did get started somehow. So when you started the podcast, where were you in all this with the other brands? Were you just like, I got to do this? This is like this burning desire to get this to be in this entertainment side of things. What drove what was the impetus for all that?
I always wanted to do a podcast, but I never had a reason to. And then I was kicked off SWAT. So SWAT wasn't a fan of my internet personality and like what I would do to sell shirts. And they weren't a fan of my apparel company at the time. They said it was too edgy. They were like, if you shoot somebody, you're going to have shirts like be confrontational and blah, blah, blah. So I was kicked off SWAT and I had a lot of time on my hand because I was used to giving 70, 80 hours a week, to work, most of it being SWAT training and SWAT, call outs and warrants. So, with a lot of time on my hand, I looked at the 5 essential things to do to start a podcast. And then I hit up Amazon. I ordered all my first shit, picked a date and went with it and never stopped.
And it was just you when you started?
Yeah, I mean, I had some friends that helped me out along the way. And if you're ever going to start a podcast, if you're not famous already, you rely on friends and family to get you through the first parts of it before you get your big, like, oh, I'm getting bigger guests now, people I don't know, But yeah, it was friends and family that originally like hooked it up at the beginning.
I can relate to that. So, I mean, I started, nobody knew who I was or whatever. And not to say that a ton of people do now, but it was really starting from scratch. And I think I was encouraged by people to do it. But it was also out of necessity to try and drive some business because we were getting crushed during the time of COVID and whatever as gym owners. Well, we went through that whole story on your show, but I guess my point here is I get that a lot of people are jumping into podcasting as an add-on to market their products and services or whatever else to something that they've already sort of had established for a while versus somebody starting from scratch. And it's still kind of, I don't know, it's still the wild, wild west. There's formats that people can follow and there's suggestions, but it seems like you either can or you can't do it. And a lot of it has to do with how much time you can put into it. And then obviously with when I say time, we've had some exchanges before of just all the things you run into in the learning process. You lose sound, you lose cameras. These cameras don't work well. This equipment doesn't work right. Like, what should I be editing with? And then there's the putting it on social media.
It doesn't matter. Something will always go wrong.
Always go wrong.
I guarantee you that we will do this podcast and something won't. Well, we'll have to pause it. Camera will go out. But yeah, I started really the same reason why what you just said was I had an apparel. Well, I still do, but the apparel line. And I was like, I need to get on podcasts, right? To promote. I didn't know any podcasts. I knew none. So I was like, okay, I'll start my own podcast as my own marketing arm, right? Mm-hmm. For this, right? Even if you get a couple hundred listeners a podcast, as long as you have something that can be digested on the internet or shipping, it doesn't have to be a physical location. I know you do have a physical location, but if you have something to offer for sales that can be sold anywhere, that's a couple hundred people right there that will buy that routinely. So it's a really good reason to start a podcast. And then, but what happened was the podcast took off, and then it became like
its own thing.
I had to put my priority on the podcast because that was making money. So,
yeah, no, that's part of it with regard to how much time it takes and how much you got to put into it. Interestingly, you had a pretty the rise to, I would call it success based on what I know about you guys, and us people that do these things track metrics and we watch what other people are doing. There's a little bit of a scorecard there, shows what you guys have been able to do on YouTube and then across the audio platforms and obviously on Instagram. It's been an interesting ride. So going back to the apparel, the first one that I saw was the No TikTok Cops or No Dancing Cops.
Ruben wore it on your show.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first place I saw it.
That's how I first saw you. I was like, man, this guy's got a radio voice, like very great. I was like, Ruben, this guy's got amazing quality. Like your video was really good and your audio was really good. And I think I had just started podcasting right around then, and I was like looking at my shit, and I was like, ugh, that was awful compared to yours.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. But Ruben Alvarez was on the show, Paradox Training, and he had your shirt on, and I had asked him about it in the studio. That's going back almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
3.5 years ago. And so that's how I saw it. And then I saw the podcast, and then I was making the connection and whatever else. But what really drew me into the podcast was the interplay between and what you guys were bringing to the table with Brent's background and your background, and particularly your background and again, the name of the show being the Anti-Hero Podcast, that struck me because it was about, for me, and maybe I was getting the wrong impression, but for me, it was, we're being honest about this. We're being honest about policing. We're being honest. Maybe there was some body cam footage reviews and some incident reviews that were going on, and it wasn't the popular narrative. It was like, hey, this dude really screwed up here. Like, and maybe it was righteous or whatever else in terms of being on the right side of the law, so to speak. But this could have gone a different way if it had been handled differently, and we need to do better. And I'd seen some people doing that on on social media through Instagram or whatever else. I think there's some folks out there that do a really good job with that. But you guys were hitting it pretty regularly, and it was a good, honest take. And then there was this component of, again, you had been, you worked many different things, and as a police officer, and Brent obviously has an interesting, a pretty unique background, I think. And we don't hear from that community very often, at least not publicly. Not in the format that I was hearing. I was hearing a lot of ex-special operators doing podcasts, but it wasn't like this. And so I got drawn into it. And yes, there have been, you guys have had some very successful episodes with, some subject matter or topics or on people that gain a lot of attention. But I actually enjoyed listening to the lesser known guests or that you guys were hosting on the show about their career path, about the things that they had been involved in, the ups and downs, the challenges, like the inside to the inside. And again, I thought you guys were handling that in a really honest way. I wonder, so the question in all this is I wonder, did that evolve? Was that something that you had you had planned to do, or is this just something that just kind of started to happen and snowball and you were just running with it? I guess what I'm asking is like, how much of this is planned and how much of this is like, this is just happening?
Yeah, not much was planned. So I had done my first big guest on the entire podcast was Brent Tucker. And that episode 12, that did phenomenal. And I wasn't used to, I was using a couple hundred, views maybe. So I was like, oh shit, okay. And so then Brent, I hit him up a couple months later. I was like, hey man, you need to come back on the podcast. That first one did great. And he was like, yeah, I'm launching a cigar line. We'll do another one. So I think he came on episode 35 or 36 or something. And it was a 2-part. It's called Delta Force and Cigars. And during one of them, he said, obviously Rob O'Neill didn't kill Osama bin Laden. And I was like, wait, say that again?
Right. That was kind of dropped in at the end of an episode.
Yeah. And then we were like, all right, later. And so there was this huge, I made that a clip, Delta Force calls out Rob O'Neill, and that blew up over in the millions on every social media platform. So there was a huge demand for Brent to clarify a little bit on what he was talking about.
Yeah, rightly so. That's a bold statement, right?
So episode 37, again, was Brent on as a third time as a guest doing the Rob O'Neill Web of Lies. After that, I was like, I know it's not just I was like, there's a good chemistry here. We're starting something. I was like, I think we need to rebrand and make this you official co-host and half owner. And he said, yeah. Ever since then, we've been, like you said, we do a hodgepodge of like guests. Like obviously we try to get big name guests. And we also like to have the average cop, that's doing something different, or, a firefighter that, and to kind of like be like, oh yeah, you'll have this like Navy SEAL Team 6 guy on one episode and then a cop on the next one. And it's like, there's no, like, it's not just high name people, but it's not also just the average Joe. It's a mixture of both because everybody benefits from it.
Yeah, that was what, again, I guess that's what I was trying to say. That's what drew me in is the number one, it's unscripted. I love that it's unscripted. However, a lot of these episodes, especially the ones where you've gone deep for multiple hours on, some of these names that you, like the one you just dropped there, very researched. And when I say that, I just mean a lot has gone into making sure if we're going to make a statement, we have something to bring to the table from some rationale as to why we're making that statement. It's not just talking. It's like, here's why I think that. And I think that's the great part about podcasting is that you can do that and it can be relatively safe. And the fact that you guys go long form, you don't just make statements and walk away from it. You go long form. And then the live show allows you an opportunity to maybe answer questions or kind of answer the things that people felt like you left unanswered. I wonder, so when did that, maybe you talk about that a little bit and the evolution there.
Yeah. Well, the live show came on. We had a buddy that was like, hey, this is what podcasts are doing. This is how you create a real culture, is that you host a weekly live show and everybody comes together and you kind of like create a family. And then, so we started doing that, and then releasing a show on a Monday that's pre-recorded, right? Well, on third, we release it and it has 3-4 days to
marinate.
And then we learn all these things about that topic that we didn't know. We tried. And so people will be like, oh, I was there. This is what happened. Thursday is when we can address all the new information that we would have never known if we hadn't have put out the episode on Monday. So it's kind of cool how that works out.
I think so too. And I thought it was unique because I don't do that. And I get where some of these topics have been super controversial, right? And the community's divided. Whether we're talking about an ex special ops guy or what tier 1 guy or whoever, and the fact that you readdress or you take the opportunity to. I heard what you said. There was like, we didn't know. We did the best job we could with what we had. We're not perfect at it. Or this came out of the woodwork. We had no idea. We're looking deeper into this. These are things that came up. And you're pretty honest about it. When I say pretty honest, I mean, you're pretty transparent. Like, hey, we may have messed that up. Like, I don't know. But we're here to say we didn't know that. And now that we do, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Versus kind of just walking away from it and then moving on to the next episode. I don't think there's a lot of podcasts out there that are doing that. I think it's pretty unique.
Yeah, a lot of people get really upset too because you're touching on a point or talking about a subject that to them was a really bad time in their life, or they lost friends, or they lost comrades, and a podcast just sitting there doing what they can about it still pisses them off because they're like, no, you don't understand. I was there. This is what happened. I'm like, okay, yeah, like thank you for reaching out. Like, tell me what happened, and then I'll get the story and we'll fix it. And then those people are like, man, that's really cool that you guys did that, because a lot of people just they blow and go, hit the subject, move on, and we do that too. But I mean, if we get something substantial that we need to talk about,
yeah, you guys have revisited things 100 times, where necessary, not what's the word, like not extraneously, I guess is a super complicated word, but anyways, and it, I actually had Brent on the show, and I did not want to get into the Tim Kennedy thing in depth, but it had just happened like 2 months before, and it was still reeling. And so I said, look, I have a couple of questions. And I also knew, because I'd been following it pretty tightly, that you guys were taking a lot of heat from it. And at the same time, there was a lot of support for it as well. And I thought it was really interesting how you came out and readdressed it with some of the folks that were actually on the ground there. And I was like, man, these guys are going there. So I have a few questions, and I didn't, like I said, I spent a few minutes, maybe it was 20 minutes kind of going through some of those things. But I thought it was, what I wanted to do is give Brent an opportunity to kind of talk about himself a little bit and his background, because people were taking personal shots at you guys.
Yeah.
And that comes with the territory. If you're gonna say stuff, what I get from you guys is like, you care, but it's not something that's going to impact your life in a negative way. You're not going to let it do that. But you are aware of it. And I think it's important that, people have you on their show and they ask the questions like, how does that stuff impact you? When you hear it or when you read it, and people are taking personal shots and saying things like, you guys are just here to bring down the veteran community, again, part of that community, and you guys are just out here attacking and trying to take people out at the knees. How do you feel about that, man?
I took Joe Rogan's advice. I never read comments. That being said, I do read things.
Never?
From time to time.
Come on, man.
I really don't. Because they're mostly, because what I find is that I could read 9 good comments and I'm like, cool. And I'm never going to, well, I should, but I'm never going to reach out to those 9 people and be like, thank you for the nice thing you said about me. I'm going to wait until I see that one. And I'm going to be like, fuck you, asshole. And and I just, like giving those people a platform rather than the 9 people that said a nice thing about the show. I just was like, you know what? Because I know me, and I'll do that. I'll 100% do that. The podcast got started. When it got started, a big thing was I would, put sunglasses on like this.
Right.
And I would just roll through comments and like troll haters, and it would make people so mad. And I'd be like, I thrive off your hate type thing. And I'd laugh. And like, because it was all entertainment for me. Mm-hmm. No one knew me personally. They were like, oh, this guy's, because they started that, like when they said these guys want to bring down the veteran community. I heard a lot about that with like, this guy is just a disgruntled cop. He's not out there working. They don't know me. They don't know that I'm out there. I've been on the street units. I've been on SWAT. Like, they don't know any of that. They just see me. And I know that I'm trying to do good and do right by our industries and our cultures. And one of the things was Tim Kennedy is like, it just did not sit right with me and Brent. And especially when Brent filled me in on things that only people in that community would know. I would not know that. Most people did not know. There was some kind of suspicion that Tim Kennedy might be a little bit of an overzealous guy, but other than that, and him saying like I have medals of valor and stuff when he didn't. I got hit with shrapnel and got like what? So
yeah. So I didn't want to make that interview about that. I don't want to make this one about that either. You guys have said what you said, and you've also said that there may be other podcasts in the future. We'll see about that. But on that topic, at the same time, what you said there about like you don't know me, and so again, like I kind of all I've been able to do is pick up what I get from the show, and then the brief time that I spent with you guys, I think I was episode like number 3 for the day, when I came and saw you guys. So I know how that goes. Like it's brief, and so you try to get a good sense of who folks are. But going back to the police community, and I want to talk about that and the challenges that exist out there that police officers have to deal with, that the public has to deal with, that admin has to deal with, and some of the disconnects that exist for all of you, for all of us, I think. And the challenges and the frustrations that come along with that. And some of the questions that I have from the outside looking in are, I think they're very broad questions. Like, why can't we get this together? Why can't people come together and find some agreement? And why can't we attack these problems at the root and fix them? And again, we could pick any number of things that exist out there, but you've been a cop long enough to have seen probably the circle come all the way around a couple of times, or the wheel come around full circle a couple of times. I wonder, in your career from where you started to where you are now, and the things that you've done, and obviously the other paths that you're taking, and I know this is a really big question, but what's the major thing that just challenges you the most as a cop, but also as a host who talks to other cops, who hears a lot of the similar stuff that's going on? That the challenges to me are almost all the same no matter where you go, right? No matter what agency, no matter what department it is, everybody has their unique situation. But I wonder for you, like, what's the thing that bothers you the most that you think could be solved? And I'm not saying it would be easy, but it's the thing that needs to be worked on. And it wouldn't be that tough to do if people just got focused on doing it.
Oh man, I would say like it's what all the cops say is that when you handcuff my hands behind my back, I can't go out and enforce the law. Okay. There's sheriffs out there that will tell the public what they need to hear at times, and it's not pretty. And I always say this: police work is like wanting to see the police do their job is like wanting to see your sausage get made. Right? You sit at home, no one's breaking into your house, your kids go to school. Your life that you live is the way it is because essentially there's people out there enforcing the social contract theory, stating that no one can violate your rights, no one can detriment your health or steal from you, and blah, blah, blah. So with that, there has to be like we have to be able to tell people like it's not pretty sometimes. Like police work is when you apprehend a criminal, sometimes it looks awful. But that's how we've been doing it for 200 years, 250 years, and even longer. And now there's this like, well, I want to see it that. Every Karen wants to have her opinion about how it doesn't take 8 people to put him in the back of a patrol car. Yeah, it does. Especially if we don't want to hurt him. Because if it's only 2 guys, guess what? That guy that's in a mental health crisis or in a drug schizophrenic state or, high, if we only have 2 of us to get to, which we will, it's our job to apprehend him, it's going to hurt him. As opposed to 8 people, we could safely apprehend him with causing him the minimal amount of harm. And I always say this too, like, everybody wants to give their opinion about how we did something. But if I flipped it and said, what if they did that to you? What if they did that to your daughter? What if that person stole this from you? Well, I'd want you to do something about it. And they wouldn't care how you did it because they're the victims. Mm-hmm. But when it's anybody else, they just want to have an opinion. And it's like anything else. everybody's, got an opinion and they want to share it. And we used to just say like, that's awesome, but we're not going to listen to what you have to say when we do it. But that's clearly changed in the last 10 years.
Yeah. So the court of public opinion is a rough place. When I look at it from my outside looking in, and this is what drew me to talking with more police officers, is that what I found is, and I say this a lot on the show, so for people who listen to the show, they might, they go, dude, you say this all the time. And I say it all the time because I think it's true. And I think that that's part of the problem. And that is that the law enforcement in general, particularly the officers on the street to do the job that have to apprehend these people and protect and serve, the citizens of their communities, have a diminished First Amendment right. They're not supposed to talk about things. And when something comes out that looks awful, they're not supposed to say anything because already the optics are bad, right? So anything that gets said on top of that could make it worse. But there's also, if that's true, it also could be true that something being said could make it better. And that better is just a higher level of awareness of the people that have these, for the people that have these opinions. And you're certainly entitled to your opinion. It's fucking America. You can do and say whatever you want. It's a great part about living in this country. At the same time, when it starts impacting policy, and just going back to what you were saying about your hands are cuffed and you're not able to perform the job and do the things that need to be done in order to solve the problem. And then policies get written around that make your job harder to do, or put legal ramifications on you that now, whether you're doing your job correctly or not, it might end up in a criminal lawsuit and you could be held liable for that. I can't imagine what that feels like based on somebody's opinion and what they saw and the narrative that ran was something that ultimately impacts you in that way.
Yeah. So people wanting to get rid of qualified immunity for cops, I really, truly believe that some people are just on a Soros-planted political agenda to disrupt our country's stabilization. Because, listen, if you take away qualified immunity from cops, and if anybody doesn't know what that is essentially saying you can't take my house because something went sideways on a call. You call in a burglar, somebody in my house, I think they got a gun. I'm 2 blocks away. I whip it around and, I come in and I come to your front door that's kicked in, but you're coming out to look for the bad guy and I shoot you. Oh my God. It's the worst thing in the world.
It's horrible.
But it's human. It's human, not nature. It's human error. We're only human. And so that being said, qualified immunity makes it to where you or your family can't ruin my family because I agreed to do the job. Not saying that I don't need to be fired. Not saying that I don't need to face criminal charges. Not saying that those things are all separately. But tying me into the job itself, I took an oath to defend the Constitution and serve the people. And to take that away from, who in their right mind would want to do the job at that point? Like, if you can see, and that's a very extreme example, but there's tons of little examples that I want to sue that cop. Okay, well, you can try and sue the cop. That's not going to work. You could sue the agency though. The agency might pay you out $10,000 because he went in your pocket when he wasn't supposed to, things like that. And, but at the end of the day, if you can sue me personally and my family's going to get affected by it for the job, you're not going to have people sign up. And the people that do sign up, you're not going to want.
Well, I think we're seeing that now. I mean, I don't know, maybe you could answer that. What are you seeing now, 10 years later? You've been on the job for 10 years in terms of the folks coming in and their connection to the reality that you just said or that you just went through versus maybe how it was.
Yeah, so we all experienced that. We got a little taste of that when our government decided to, in my eyes, essentially unconstitutionally shut us all down. That was when I started really getting afraid of the type of people that we had as cops, because, like I said, real cops are I represent the people. My leader was elected by you or was appointed by a public official that you elected.
You voted
I'm
for.
an extension of you and what you voted for. So I serve you. I don't serve the government, right? So the social contract theory, I know I said that earlier, is it was essentially like if somebody were to break into your house and steal all your shit, and then you saw them, you can't just go beat the fuck out of them.
Right.
And get your shit, you'll go to jail. So you rely on the police to do an investigation and to hold that person accountable and then serve them to the justice system. That's how it's supposed to be. So we all agree amongst each other to live by a certain set of rules as a tribe, as human beings. So I enforce that. That's what I do not enforce government regulations and sanctions. And I'm really, truly worried that the type of cop that would, I always joke, so at what point is your point? Like, I talk to cops, like, at what point would be your point where you take that badge off and throw it on the counter? And every cop, I think, has a different, like, if they're pushed to a different level. And we're getting to I work with people that I know for a fact. Because when they say to go oppress citizens, they're not going to say that. They're going to say it in a really different way where it's for their own benefit and blah, blah, blah. And the cops go, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. And then they're going to go start enforcing, and Brent's a huge advocate of cops. And he's like, cops aren't going to take your guns, which is true. Right now, no, you don't have to worry about cops taking your guns. But
we're getting close, man.
The type of people we're recruiting, they're building that army as we speak. So
that's the answer I was looking for, because I think if we were faced with the shutdowns or the lockdowns again, like right now, we're looking at 5 years after the fact when we're recording this thing, almost to the date, maybe a little bit past there. But if we were to face that again, I wonder what it would look like this time, because a lot of those cops that were there, they did reach their limit and they did throw their badge on the desk and they walked away. A lot of them stuck it out and are probably in a position right now. Well, and when I say this is just from my personal conversations with folks. They are uneasy. They do not feel good about the things that they're doing. There's another part of that population that's like, look, I recognize what happened. I am in control of how I think and how I feel and how I act on a regular basis. And when it's time for me to hang it up, I will. I do have a hard line. I recognize that now more than I did. I don't regret staying, but I'm having a really tough time with some of the things I'm seeing inside of here. And as a result, it's discouraging me from taking a promotion, walking into leadership, even having conversations with leadership anymore. I just want to come, do my job, serve the people, as you said, and go home at the end of the day, knowing that I did the best job I could given, whatever I was faced with at that particular time. And so I think what we're seeing now is, again, going back to like, if this happened again, what would happen to that population of cops? It's just kind of, I don't want to say they're barely hanging on, but they're doing the best they can and they're not super happy about it. As opposed to that population of cops, it's like that you just mentioned that maybe got hired in who are like, oh, we're doing this for your own good. Anytime I hear that, like, I'm already on edge. Like, we're doing this.
I'm the government. I'm here to help.
Yeah, I'm here to help you. Yeah, whatever the Ronald Reagan line was, right? Like the 5 or whatever most frightening words you could ever hear. That does concern me. And what concerns me more is that certain sides of that line are dug in even harder now as a result of some of the recent political things that have happened. We have a new president. He's coming at things in a much different way than the other administration did. I'm not even going to say president because I don't think that guy was doing anything. I think his administration was. And you've got these factions that are creating even more of a divide and looking at things as being even that much more unfair, which is challenging people on the inside to now have to make decisions. I think before, the decisions were kind of already made for them in a sense. And what I mean by that is like administration. Maybe you agree or disagree with that, but I think it was like, no, this is what we're doing. Counties, states, cities, they were just kind of onboarding whatever's being trickled down. And now they're seeing like, I don't have to do that anymore, which I have to imagine creates even more of a divide on the inside, but that much more because there's that much more of a divide on the outside. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but if it does, can you make sense of it?
Well, like talking about what would happen if this all happened again, I do believe that you will see more cops that make the wrong choices. And I also see, you're going to see it, like we talked, when you were on our show, man, you talked about such a great point. When the rioters were coming through and the decisions that you had made then, and had you acted on them, could have ruined your life and could have been the most awful decisions ever. And you're like, thank God I didn't act on those. And you were holding yourself accountable. It's foolish. I was emotional, but you drive like a man to do that. And I don't think it's the rioters that are going to feel any type of, pushback. I think it's going to be when the government comes to shut down family-owned businesses and gyms. I really, truly feel that their mindset's going to be, I barely survived this the first time, or my parents lost their business. I can't let this happen. I have to stay open. And I mean, I just think that's going to be a very ugly scene.
I agree with you. I mean, I admittedly, at first it was like, this cannot go on for real. And this is ridiculous. This is insanity. This will be over soon. And it wasn't. It kept going and it kept going because so many people, I think, did fold and did cave. And I'm not talking about cops. I'm talking about humans. I'm talking about the people and shutting down their businesses. And for us, it was like, also, people are talking about the business owners that stood up or fought back or didn't stand up or fought back or anything in between, to recognize like they have bills to pay, and those customers may be on either side of that line. And so, you taking a stand or whatever, saying anything could, whether you're shut down or not, ruin your business.
Yeah, and because it's a political thing. Half your 100%. Constituents and your patrons might be of the liberal left that really, truly believe that they could die if they don't wear a cloth mask on their face.
That was my situation, right? So it was very, very, very hard. Even employees, right? So what you're dealing with is this teetering, this very fine balance of, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're not going to do. You are a free will. You're an American. You make the choices that you want to make. I'm not going to say one way or another whether you're doing is wrong or right. This is the direction we're heading as a business, and we're going to do our best to try and balance this the best we can. Do I have regrets? I have a few. There were some things I probably would have done differently. I did things that I didn't want to do, but I felt I needed to do. And this is a whole other piece, going back to even cops making decisions to continue to put food on my table, right? To continue to protect my family and my employees. And when I say my family, I think the collective family of the clients that were here that needed us, that were dealing with some pretty serious stuff. Beyond just, again, people look at us, it's just the gym, you can skip the gym. For a lot of people, it's not just the gym, right? It's much bigger than that. And for our employees,
it's a needed thing for people to function.
Oh, we found that out in spades. I mean, in terms of survival, like those that did better, right, were generally more fit, or at least taken care of and focused on health rather than focused on wearing a mask or whatever else. So, and the other part of that is a lot of the population was mildly inconvenienced, I think. Like, okay, now I have to stay at home. Big deal, right? Whereas, again, you mentioned before, we have brick and mortar. Like, we need people coming here. If they're not coming here, we're not making money. I don't want to make it about COVID and whatever. I just want to make the point that we've seen this transition in law enforcement where we have probably more of the other than we did. Yes. And that challenges me as new policies and things are, so go back to what Brent's talking about with regard to, the cops taking away our firearms. No, maybe the cops aren't now, but there's a lot of people challenging whether or not people should have firearms, where they can take them. I live in California, man. No, there's New York, New Jersey. There's a few states on the East Coast that are, Colorado's kind of one of those now. Oregon, Washington.
Even in Florida. Dude, there's this thing called a risk protection order where if law enforcement decides I need to be evaluated mentally against my will, which happens all the time, people are taken into custody, protective custody for their own well-being. Right, I'm not really against that at all. There's no constitution involved in that. There's no rights. As soon as I determine you a threat to yourself or others, and you need help, I can apprehend you, and I'm not under any type of. There's nothing you can do to sue me. However, that being said, now I could go to my chain of command and be like, this guy's girlfriend says he's got like 5 guns inside. We're allowed to go in and take those guns. And it could have been something, and it's not as cut and dry as that, but it's pretty much cut and dry as far as like, that's how easy it is. And like, I just feel like, you know, there was the shot heard around the world a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if another COVID happens again, everybody's going to be waiting for that store owner to pull that, to make that shot heard around the world. And it's going to be like, oh, did you hear what they did? And then it's going to be a little like civil unrest. And now all of a sudden it can't, you know, it's people are revolting, but in a good way. Like, you know, hey, like you're not going to come in here and tell me I can't function. I can't, yeah, especially while they leave the Planet Fitness is open. Right. Or the Lowe's and the Home Depot is open. Like there's just no logic to it. And no one was held accountable. And they didn't have to provide answers. It was just the wildest time to be alive.
So where does that leave a cop for you now? You know, just in potentially dealing with something like that. I mean, is this something that's even talked about, or you know, amongst your friends, or is this something?
No, because everybody would say, "Oh, I wouldn't do that." And then when push comes to shove, man, we joke all the time. Cops, it's a cult. Police work is a cult, and they're like, yeah, if you don't do this job, you're nothing, and you have to retire. And guys will be like, oh, I'm 9 years in, I only have 16 more years left. Like, wow, like I'm all about retirement if that's what you want, but cops will blame their pension on any bad decision they ever make. Well, I have a pension I gotta look out for. I gotta feed my family. Like, I would rather my kids look at me and be like, Dad did something courageous and stood up for something, and as opposed to being a coward and a bad example to my children.
Yep, I've had a few people on the show that did that very thing, and they're thriving now. They're thriving, been hired by other departments. In some cases, got back into police work. In other cases, started their own businesses and are thriving, and made that decision because they made that decision, as hard as it was and as much turmoil as they went through and the family went through and so forth. They've come out the other side. It's taken a long time, and it wasn't without a lot of damage financially and emotionally and all those things, but they have come out the other side. So, yeah, I was just curious about that, because you're usually pretty, like I expected, you're very honest and open and forthcoming about, your thoughts on it and the realities of kind of what you see. And if I don't think anywhere in there I would disagree with you. And from my position from the outside looking in, I remember seeing the defeat on law enforcement faces when we were calling them about stuff that was way outside of our control, that was happening in the city and things like that. And like, look, man, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. There's not a lot we can do, or there's nothing we can do. This is what you can do, right? Potentially, but our hands are tied, our hands are cuffed. There's not a lot we can do here.
And I always say this: if you're butthurt and you're a cop and you feel like I'm targeting you, I'm absolutely targeting you. Because most cops should be like, yeah, like I'm all about it. Prove me wrong. If I'm wrong about cops in general, and this happens again, and police in general like sets the best example of what to do as a police, I'll be the first one to be like, I had it all wrong. But I don't think I am wrong.
I don't think you are either. But again, that's just my opinion, man. Anyway, okay, so let's talk a little bit, move on to kind of like what you're doing in entertainment, podcast culture. We mentioned a couple things up front, and that was like Counterculture. And we mentioned Refracted Wolf Apparel. Obviously, you got Brent that's on the show, owner of FRCC. That's First Responder Coffee Company and Cigar Company. To me, from the outside looking in, those businesses look fairly successful. We're starting to see some rebranding going on. I've seen you on lots of shows with lots of guys. There's a lot of cross promotion going on there. Maybe break that down for me, because I've been trying to follow it all and keep up. I recently just had Kenny Williams on the show, the Red Ninja, who I've seen on some Counterculture episodes as well as his own episodes. Try to bring this all together for us, man. Help me understand it.
Yeah. So, Oh, wow. So like
I mean,
said,
there's music involved, there's apparel involved, there's all kinds of stuff there, man.
I started the apparel line first, and then started the Anti-Hero podcast after that. And then the Anti-Hero podcast grew, and we were starting to like we were getting, I mean, this is going to sound like an asshole, but it's true. This is why everything happens. We were getting hit up by people that were like, hey, can we sponsor your show? And I'm like, sure, man. And they're like, oh, we can't afford to do anything. We can only afford this. And I was like, my hands are kind of tied as far as like, you sponsor an Anti-Hero, but I was like, so we were not going to say losing out, but I was like, these are all businesses that are owned by cops or military, and they have no marketing budget whatsoever, and they just but they're like, your demographic is so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, so what I'll do is I'll get as many podcasts that are Anti-Hero size or smaller, and I'll put them all in one network, and then I'll go and I'll broker all these deals with all these businesses. Like, hey, I only have $300 a month that I can spend. And I was like, okay, well, let's look at the list of shows that we have. We have, this is the background of this show. This is the downloads, the views. And if they pick one, like, I want to represent that one, I'll go to that show and I'll say, hey, this company wants to advertise. Are you okay with this offer? And if they say yes, then Counterculture will take 20% for brokering the deal. And then that way, everybody's winning. They get to the company gets to be in front of their perfect demographic. The small podcast that, as you know, there's no money in this. Like, right. You could have a shit ton of views and downloads, but you ain't making a living off of it. And it would be nice to have, like, oh, I can pay for my car. Like, I could justify all this hard work. Finally, I make enough to pay for my car every month. The podcast handles the car, and it's something I love doing. And it's kind of like keeps that fire going. Because if you, at the end of the day, if you don't make any money, there's only so much it's going, because then it's going to become a hobby. And so you're not going to spend time adjusting it and tinkering it and making it a business plan. Like, okay, this is where my podcast is at. We're plateauing a little bit. What's the next step, right? But you have to treat it like a business. But if you're not getting any money, your podcast isn't going to do any better because you're not treating it as a business. So that's the way we did it. And then, so we did the umbrella of Counterculture Inc. And then, like I said, the main thing is going to be essentially brokering deals as an ad agency, an in-house ad agency. But we also do live events that, you can come to. We pay for everything, right? So if you can make it to the live event, like we did one in Philly, we just did one in Jersey. I think the next one's in Dallas. We'll do a live show. We'll take over an entire brewery, first responder friendly cigar bar, something like that. And we'll do a live stream and a live show with an audience. And we'll have all these podcasts come. It's a super good time. We do heated debates as a panel. It's like probably the most fun I've ever had. And yeah, and so that's Counterculture. And then, like I said, I've had Refracted Wolf apparel. That was the start of everything. And so I was like, well, Counterculture is growing fast too. So I'm now going to move Refracted Wolf underneath Counterculture. So if you order from Refracted Wolf apparel, it's going to come in a Counterculture bag, maybe a tag, because it's the main mamma jamma. And then we have
umbrella.
Yeah, and then we have other apparel companies that are just underneath it. So
it's very smart. So it's you mentioned like a marketing or an ad agency. It sounds a little bit like a record label, you know. And then you have all these different genres that you may be representing, and then you obviously have to go out and attack those different market segments specifically. But ultimately, everybody's it's a collective at the end. Everybody's benefiting. And I think the interesting part about this is it's first responder specific. And again, going back to what I was saying, more first responders seem to be starting podcasts. And what you said was, without saying it, this is what I'm saying, it's kind of a labor of love. Like, this just has to be something you really want to do, and there has to be some intention behind it. And yes, you need to treat it like a business, but what is that intention? And so what I got from originally from Anti-Hero was, it was really about finding the truth in some things and also letting people tell their stories, and providing them a platform in order to do that, to help other people maybe understanding that, this is true police work, or this is this crazy story that happened, and this is what happened after, that you may not have heard about, and this is how this person got through it, and it's giving them a voice. It's also maybe a little bit of like, it could be therapeutic for them. And I'm seeing some of the other folks that you're working with, like Unbecoming, Conduct Unbecoming out there. He's on the fire service side of things.
Yeah.
He's taking a hard line on the fire service and kind of what's happened with that culture, what's happening with that institution in terms of how firefighters are being treated, safety versus life-saving, and things like that. And so I've seen some of these guys really grow, since it seems like you've kind of been the catalyst for bringing them all together. I wonder how that's going. Like, how is it all going? Like, how is this being productive for people? Are they benefiting by this? Are people really struggling? What can you tell me?
Yeah, I think everybody's benefiting. Me and Reagan started Counterculture because we were both two people that I would gladly lose my job if I lost my voice. Like, I'm not going to lose my voice, and I'm not going to lose my morals and my principles, and I'll give up my job tenfold. He's the same way. He was like, his claim to fame, when his viral video was that he's like, firefighter deaths are down. And then he was quiet, and then the music stopped. He goes, but civilian deaths are up, I think is what he said, but civilian deaths are up, and no one cares to shed light on that, right? So the safety industry, from what I gather in the fire community, is just an industrial complex. And so they're, long story short, me and Reagan are both the same mindset. Like, hey, if we got to quit, we got to quit, but we can't stop. And so now we have these other podcasts on that are, they're putting their feet in the water. Like, me and Reagan are in there like, come on in, man. The water's nice. And people are like, I don't know. And they're stepping in a little bit. And, because they're just naturally, not anything against them, but people are naturally, if they're not, like, we go full punk rock, but sometimes that bites you in the ass.
Yep.
They're just trying to see, like, what they can and can't say. You got guys like that are two years away from retirement that aren't trying to fuck it up if they don't have to, right? If you don't have to fuck it up and you're 2 years out and no one's questioning your principles or your morals, just ride out those 2 years. But you got, but I think they're doing good. And it's also for people like me and you to be able to trickle down knowledge and experience to these guys to save them, hours on the internet. They have the ability to ask, like, hey, how did you do this? How do you do that? Like I said, I Googled the 5 main principles of a podcast, which it's consistency, saying everything that you want to say, social media shorts, like stuff like that. Like, you have to do those things or you won't grow.
Right. So speaking of, the reason I asked the growth is because I have seen more and more of the evolution of some of these other podcasts. And originally I didn't recognize the connection, but it makes sense to me. And you mentioned the business side of it, and being a cop and being a business person are two totally different things, or being a firefighter, being a business person are two different things. But what I gather is like, at its roots, and again, you mentioned going full punk rock, you got to say what you want to say, and there's ways to do it. And some people are going to like that, and some people are not. So I wonder, along the way, just with all of this, like, what has bitten you in the butt? I mean, we already talked about some of the major kind of episodes that you guys had. And when I say major, I just mean the ones that got a lot of attention, where there was some hate coming at it. But is there any lessons learned here, like major lessons learned, or the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
Man, I don't know. I don't think the biggest lesson I'd ever learned is not treating this like a legit business, because anti-hero will get out of my hands fast if I don't stay on it all day, every day. So, like, there's times when we're like, shit, we don't have an episode for Monday. Like, that's amateur mistakes that you don't make anymore. But I don't regret anything I've ever said. I don't regret any episode we ever put out. We've had people on that later I found out were questionable about what they were saying on the podcast, but there's no way I could know that. And if somebody wants to ask me about it, I'll be like, yeah, well, how you didn't know about it, so how would I know about it? And But
yeah, I think there's a way to be safe about that. It's like, hey, I'm just here to host this person. They said what they said. I'm never making the podcast about promoting this. It's not solely about the promotion of this person and their business. It's like, this person has a story to tell. They have an interesting background. Let's get into it. I'm just here to ask questions. You answer them however you want to answer them. What you say is what you say. So holding podcast hosts accountable for somebody telling something that was dishonest, saying something was dishonest, or stretching the truth, that's a tough one. I think you got to do your due diligence as a host and make sure you're bringing on right people. But you can't be fully responsible for what however somebody else acts or what they say. But at the same time, it's interesting that you're taking responsibility for that. But you're also on the flip side going, yeah, but there's other people out there saying shit on other people's podcasts that isn't true, that is very untrue, right? That is very, very stretched. So like that should be called out too, and we're not afraid to do that. And I think that's what the other podcasts in your, kind of in your collective are doing as well. And I think that's important. I think that's a cool thing about podcasts, is that people get to say things. And maybe that's taken well, maybe it isn't. Maybe they're telling the truth, maybe they are. But that's up to the person that comes on the show. If they want to be on the show that bad, right, and they come on and they tell lies, or, they tell some stuff that was maybe they shouldn't have said. And what I mean by that is I've had that happen here where, I've had cops hemmed up about stuff that they've said on the show, despite having approval to come and talk about it, they've been hemmed up. I can't be responsible for that. Like, I will take responsibility in making sure I'm not having a shitbag on, right? That's the best I can do, right? And the way to do that, I think, is coming with the right intention. Is I really think this person has something to say. I'm really interested in hearing what that is. And as long as it's presented that way, again, people are going to take it however they want. I feel like you guys have done a really good job with that. So on that note, you saying, I don't regret any episode, anything that I've said, anything that I've done here. I think that's important, because I don't think all podcasters can say that.
Yeah. And I mean, people cry and whine about how I poke fun at some people and call people out. And I'll be like, listen, we aren't where we are. Like, we're where we are because we said some of the shit we said. And, this is, a lot of people forget, this is entertainment. As much as they like to be informed, and as much as they like their podcast host, at the end of the day, you are entertaining them with a radio program. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not going to sit here and go, whoa, we can't talk about that. Like, I mean, outside of people's personal business and stuff like that, I'm a respectable person. But at the end of the day, if someone's like going off at the mouth and I'm not going to stop them. And now if they hit me up before it comes out and goes, hey, can you take that out? Absolutely. I'll take it out 100%. But like you said, I'm not going to be like, it's entertainment. The more shock value you have, the better.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think a lot of stuff has turned into that, and I think people run out of it, right? They don't have, what the average podcast does in terms of episodes when it starts?
7.
It's 3.
Three?
It's like three podcasts. Then it's over, because they have there's this connection to, I have to have this really big guest. This person is full of shock value. We're going to get that out there. We're going to cut some clips. It's going to make, it's going to be really popular, and we're going to do well. And then they see that doesn't always work, and that it's not necessarily good, because now you have to match that every time.
Yes, sustainability.
Exactly. So yes, sometimes I think in the world of social media, this is just another one of those. It's a radio show, platform. People are out there saying shit all the time, and they're saying it in 1 or 2 sentences, and then they get to walk away from it. They never have to answer to it again, or whatever else, some nasty comment or opinion or whatever. Whereas you guys come out and you try to keep the opinion pretty broad in like, hey, here's what we think, but here's where I could see where somebody may have seen it differently, and you'll go long form on it. And here's the deal. Like, people don't like it. I don't see it any different as YouTube comments or Instagram comments or whatever else, except that you guys will stay in the fight. And when I say that, I don't mean that in a negative way. I just say, like, if people want to come at us, we'll have answers. Like, we'll come back at it, versus so many other people that just stop by to drop a shitty comment and then jump out of it.
It's true.
So yeah, I mean, it's an easy thing to do. Doing podcasts on a regular basis, and you mentioned like having shock value. I think that comes in a lot of different forms, right? Like it's either you said something that people are thinking, they just won't say out loud, but you will, right?
Yeah.
Or it's something that you're getting somebody to look at it in a much different perspective, which to them could be very shocking, right? Again, like somebody wrote a book, has made a bunch of money on a particular story. And now you're going, well, let's go ahead and look at that story a little deeper and see what's there. That's shocking to people that somebody would actually call somebody out on, on that thing. So like when I hear shock value, and some people might hear what you just said right there and think that that's bad. But the reality of it is that's what people are coming to listen for. They're listening.
Yeah.
They want to be a fly on the wall. I think people want to be entertained, 100%. I think they want to be educated. And I think they want to hear different perspectives that they're not getting from a comment section or something else. I think you guys do a pretty good job with that. So question in this is where does, for Antihero specifically, how does this evolve for you guys? Where do you continue to take this? Has it changed direction in 2025 after some of the things that have happened in 2024? Does it keep going the same way? What can we look out for?
Man, I'll give you some insider info, but
I love it.
It's hard because you can have guests all day, but at the end of the day, we get bored, not bored of having guests, but we get bored of the same routine. And so there's been talks about having like a Joe Rogan style podcast where we just have like people on it and we have the conversations instead of the guest.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like our conversation was amazing, right? But sometimes you'll get these high-end guests that we flew in and they're going to bring in the views, and they do, but the fucking conversation's boring as hell. Because it's all about them. Not saying that they want it to be about them, but we're asking them questions about them. It turns into an interview, a history lesson about their life. And then the conversations are really lacking, where you have that Joe Rogan style where you're just talking about whatever the hell you want. The clips are endless. You can literally clip any minute of that podcast and it's going to be good. And so we've thought about maybe going that route. We're definitely keeping the lives going. There's a lot that we could do and that we want to do, and I think that's probably the future of Antihero. If I had to guess,
I think you guys would be really good at that. I mean, I think that's what people want to hear is just the conversation, because at some level something shocking is going to come out.
So I will say this, right? Like you have to earn your audience. So if you grab a microphone and no one knows who you are and you start talking, no one's going to listen to you, right? So you have to earn their audience through shock value, through, whoa, these guys are crazy. Like, did he just say the retard? He can say that? Like, all right, well, these guys are funny. They're informative. They challenge certain things. They say what I want to say, but I can't say it. Once you have all that, that's when you could start having regular conversation and people want to hear what your thoughts on that topic are. Whereas opposed to if I just started yesterday, hey, let's talk about the moon landing. It's like, wow, I don't care what you have to think about that. Who are you?
Right.
But hearing Brent Tucker defend the moon landing more than anything in the world blows my mind, right? He knows all the world's dirtiest secrets, and he sits there and defends the dumbest thing I've ever heard is the moon landing. Like, that's interesting to me. And I'm on the show.
I think you're right. And that is, you're also respecting your audience. Like, recognize that you need to earn to earn their respect. You need to earn their listenership or viewership, or however you're measuring it, and then respect them in the conversations that you're going to have moving forward, whatever those are going to look like or feel like, and you'll listen and you'll hear what they like and what they don't like, and you'll be able to evolve, versus that very, very rehearsed or pitched agenda. And I hear just, I don't think I've ever said this, but I feel that, man. Like, a lot of times I'm sitting here going, I got a lot of other things too. I mean, we run multiple businesses. So like, there's always something pulling me in a different direction, much like you. Yeah. But there has to be an attention paid to this constantly. And sometimes the conversations seem a little bit repetitive. So it's tough to find if you've locked yourself into that agenda, like this is what we talk about this one thing all the time. It's tough, especially like on the fitness side, on the other side of the house, what we do. Dude, I've been talking about the fitness stuff for 25 plus years. Like, and I enjoy helping people through that process. But like you guys were asking me on the show, like, well, basic questions that we've handled thousands of times. And I'm not saying I don't respect or enjoy answering the questions you guys ask, but dude, I've answered that question so many damn times. And so part
it's
of
almost like you got a podcast about it.
Yeah. So that's what we did. So it's like, okay, well, let's just like have the conversation once and it's recorded and people can go back and listen to it. But the reality of it is like with all the podcasts we've done now, people still asking the same questions, which then brings to mind like, damn, people really just need to hear the same stuff over and over. And also understanding that you might have somebody jump into your podcast, your conversation at whatever point in the journey that you're on, and they have no idea what you've talked about at this point. Yeah. So you gotta be careful about bringing them in the right way and then holding on to them. And then also there is value in repeating things, right? And having things come up and over. It is a challenge. You bring up probably the best in the world, which is Joe Rogan, and his talent is he can sit in front of anybody and have a conversation. And it's generally pretty interesting. I mean, I can't listen to all of them, and I certainly don't listen for 3 hours of it when I do, but you guys are good at that. And you have a skill set that allows you to do that probably from the things that you've done, the world of entertainment, the world of policing, the military, maybe some of the things that you guys were trained to do and that you've had to practice on a regular basis. I'd be interested to see that. So it doesn't have to be, all cops all the time or all firefighters all the time. It could really be anybody. And I think that's what people want.
That or like, I mean, right? Like we're so structured and routine right now. We already had, this person or that, or you. Like, let's say you're in town in Orlando. Right now, the model is, well, you were already on.
On the show.
Yeah. So, or we're just having friends over for conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Rogan has the same guy on like 12 times if you look back in the history. So that's where, like, I think that's like I said earlier, I'm always looking at sustainability for any business, right? How can this be realistically sustained? You grow, but if you have to dial back a little bit, this is where our sustainability is. And that is where the next step, I think, is just based off of like, can we do this forever? Can I sit here and find people and schedule them and do this and that and then have people cancel? And can we afford plane tickets every, like we typically do like one guest where we have to buy their plane tickets probably once every 2 months, right? We save the money, we do the whole thing, but that's like a high-end guest that's worth. But
there's value. There's a value exchange.
Yeah,
yep.
We're not going to be able to do that to grow. We'd have to do that for every guest, and we can't financially afford that yet. So now we have to go back to the business model and build organically until maybe one day we can. Every guest is flying in, right? But we make enough money to where that makes sense. But right now, I think we're gonna have to put in work with conversation and raw organic stuff that people will enjoy.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation because a lot of people listen to the podcast, right? Yours, ours, and other folks, and maybe even people underneath the umbrella there with Counterculture, and they don't really get all this stuff. And maybe it's boring for some, but it's the reality of the situation. And so when you're bringing on sponsors and people question like, why would they bring that person on? Like, I feel like I'm hearing ads all the time. You got to do it because it costs money. It costs time. I mean, this is not a 10-hour a week deal. You don't just sit down, record, walk away, and then post it. Like there's all the things that have to go into it, and there's expense involved. Ask me how I know. All right, man. So moving on from that, it's just kind of insides on the podcast. I appreciate the Iron Sights exclusive there on maybe where this thing ends up going.
We haven't told anybody that.
You mentioned some of the live events that you do, which I think are an awesome idea. I've seen some other shows do that and be very successful with it. In fact, I hosted one here many years ago, before that thing we talked about back in 2020, and they do that on occasion. And it's really about driving community. They actually, they have a very specific group of people they invite in. It's super, super smart. You guys have done some concerts. There's some music involved here. So there's that part of the culture that's involved. I think if you guys weren't on the East Coast, I would have been to the first one I think you guys did. What was that thing called?
Shell Shock.
Yeah, because that's right up my alley. And there was people should go back and listen to the episodes around that and kind of the challenges you guys ran into and how you ended up pulling that thing off. And how you pivoted and how it changed. And my perception from the outside looking in was that it ended up being fairly successful, in the end. But, the live events are interesting to me. What's the next one coming up?
I think it's good. So we're doing it once a quarter. That's the only way that we can sell it to the wives, because Counterculture doesn't make enough money to be like, that's enough where everybody once a quarter can come in. Like I could, if we're doing it once a month, people will be like, I'll hit the next one, right? So we're like once a quarter kind of guarantees that most people are going to be like, all right, I'm going to make that one because the next one isn't for 3 months.
Yep.
So we do it once a quarter right now, and I think it's going to be in Dallas because we have to have a host there. So like I said, Counterculture pays for everything, but I need someone with boots on ground that can find a location and recruit the people to come, right? Because, Anti-Hero can bring, as long as it's a big city, we can bring a handful of people, right? Listeners that are like, oh, I'm going to go to this. It's in my city. But at the end of the day, I need the boots on ground to be like, go to the FOP hall, go to the union hall, go to the fire squad and whatever the hell they call it. And, hey, come to this live show. And so that's essentially the business model, and it's worked so far.
Have you guys ever considered like doing a podcast event around this? Where you do this and you invite in other podcasters. And so you get all the podcasters in the same spot at the same time at one of these events, maybe a day or two in advance leading up to the event, and everybody just swaps microphones and basically does each other's podcasts and helps drive traffic to these things. And
that's what we do.
Okay. So I didn't know that part.
Yeah, that's a live show. So we'll have 3 8-foot tables, one in the middle, and then we'll have 3 to 4 people at a table, and there'll be respective podcasts at each one, pass around microphones, talking about big topics, picking on some of the smaller podcasts because they won't, some of the more seasoned guys, if you don't take that mic from them, they ain't stopping. And you got some of the other podcasts that are like patiently waiting their turn, and you're like, yo, bro, you better
jump in,
stand up and grab that mic, dude. So it's such a good time.
I've seen these events before where I think actually, so in the fitness industry, there was paleo effects, like the paleo diet, and they used to do a big CrossFit thing around it or whatever, and all these fitness podcasters would come, and it wasn't a panel like that though. Like everybody had like an Airbnb, or there was a few Airbnbs, and they had these rooms set up, and everybody would just show up and they'd knock out like 3-4 podcasts a day. And so they get all that work done like in one spot, but because they're all in the same spot. So it's like kind of like SHOT Show. That I get a lot of work done at SHOT Show every year. We'll do
6 months worth of work.
I'll do like 9-10 podcasts, right? And so you get 9-10 weeks worth of work done, but you also, get to cross promote everybody and whatnot. But I think that's smart. And I don't see, and again, like you're doing that to some extent, which is interesting. I think there's probably a business in that. I certainly don't have the time for it, but if there's an event where you can get everybody to that makes sense for everybody to be at and get that kind of thing done, it doesn't even necessarily need to be connected to. You don't even necessarily need to be connected to the event. As an example, we're recording this thing on a Monday. The following Monday, I'm going to be at the Texas Tactical Police Officers Association conference in Texas. I think actually FRCC is sponsoring that, so I think they have a booth there and whatever else. But you wouldn't even have to even be part of that show. You could just be in the same city with all the different, podcasters that are going to be there or whatever, and have your own event there, side by side with it.
Because all those SWAT dudes after 5 o'clock got to have something to go do.
Dude, yeah, it is a thing, and they ain't working out. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so, they need somewhere to drink alcohol.
Right, exactly, and lots of it. Anyway, look, man, there's a business side of this that I wanted to cover with you, just kind of on where the Anti-Hero podcast has been, where it's going, what you're doing on the back end of all this, all while being, a full-time police officer. Which, again, I think it's encouraging to me that we're seeing, guys like you reaching out and trying to create conversations around the industry, but also beyond that. And that comes all the way back to what we were talking about before. And you mentioned in this particular scenario that you guys are just humans, right? And I think however you can have a voice as a human outside of, when you put that, that uniform on and that badge on every day, whether you're a firefighter, whether you're a cop, whether you're in your military or whatever else, there's a community that can come together there. And I think you guys have done a really good job with that. And I admire it, looking from the outside in, because I don't see anyone else. We've seen it happen kind of in the special operations community. You had like the Brovet podcast that kind of got started, I don't know, maybe it's 10 years ago now, maybe it's not quite so long ago. And you saw that thing get wildly popular, and then it just kind of disintegrated for lots of different reasons. And I thought they really had something good going there. And for me, from the outside looking in, it was so entertaining. It was a peek inside the culture that I had no idea about. And you get to hear some stories or whatever else. But ultimately, I don't know what the intention was. And the 20-year war is over, and those stories can only be told so many times, where you have active, first responders out there that are constantly involved in something every single day, all day long. There's all kinds of things. There's problems, there's solutions, there's heroic acts, there's, challenges that come up where you can review and constantly be, I think, getting better, as a culture. And people might disagree, but I think more first responders doing the type of thing that you're doing is good for them, which I think ultimately is good for the community. Whether you like the fact that they have a voice or not, and you're on the inside of that community, that's not what I'm talking about. But I think that getting the messages out and telling the stories and allowing people to have a platform to do that, and this might sound cliche, but it's kind of a safe space to do it, so to speak. As long as you have thick skin and you can handle that other people might not like you doing it or whatever else, I think more people need to be doing it, and you're giving them sort of a vehicle to do that. Is the Counterculture umbrella open for business in terms of taking on more people, or what?
Yeah. We're trying to find like-minded podcasts that can benefit from us. I've talked to podcasts, and I've broken it down, and I said, hey, I don't see a benefit to coming over with us. As far as, this is what we offer you. You don't need this. You don't need this. You're not looking for this. Like, if I was you, I would not do this because we can't offer you anything, as opposed to, I would love this. I would love that. Okay. Well, like the only thing we ask for is the RSS feed. That's it. Everything else is the networking, the live shows, the advertisements, like all that comes with, the only payment is the RSS feed, because we're able to take all, like one show might get it, like let's say like one show gets $10,000 a month, but then if you add all the shows together, the network gets $250,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to go to pitch bigger companies that would be like, hey, our network has $250,000 a month in downloads, as opposed to, so they might be like, okay, now I'm interested because you had us at $250,000. That's a lot, right?
Yep.
And so then I could be like, so I learned all that. I've been around the block a time or two with networks. got the insight on them. I worked for them. We've been kicked off a network because of the Tim Kennedy thing. So I do have a little bit of experience in that game. So yeah, and to go back to what you're saying, the holding ourselves accountable as first responders, especially cops. Like, I just got done sitting here saying, I don't want Karens judging us. I don't. But if I expect society to sit back and trust what we're doing, we have to call each other out. And, the cop video world will never cease to entertain. There will always be content out there as long as human beings exist, they will have negative interactions with law enforcement, and there will be something to talk about. Or, like you said, heroic actions.
That's what I mean.
Now that we have body cams, we're seeing all these saves and these good shoots and these hostage rescues that we never would have seen before. So it's always going to provide, and I'd be the first one to say, someone getting into that field, just cover first responder stuff. Because you'll always have it. It'll always be there. So.
I think that's what I was trying to say is there's going to be no end to this if that's what you want to talk about. Like there will be no end.
The war is over.
Right.
So now they're all, I pick on them all the time. Now they're like, shit, I'm starting a podcast, and I'm going to interview all the special operations guys that were just on the other podcast.
Right. Or have been for the last 10 years. Yeah.
And you'll start seeing that the viewers are just kind of like, oh, I've already heard this story. Don't need to watch that one. I've heard this a million times. So, sustainability.
Okay. So last question here on that, just with the sustainability in terms of advice on what to talk about, right? And so for somebody that's thinking about getting into a podcast, and you mentioned you Googled the five fundamentals or whatever, but in terms of somebody getting started to do something like this, where do you suggest they start, and how do they do that?
So I would come up with the craziest ideas, and whichever one someone said, absolutely do not say that, go with that. And that you will already set yourself apart from anybody else. If you play it safe in any type of business, your chances of getting a good break are as well diminished as opposed to somebody that takes risks. So if you want to say something, say it, especially if you can make it, if you could do it authentically. That takes a long time. I mean, I'm sure when you first get in front of a camera, you're monotone, you're terrified of what you're saying.
Disaster.
But, now you can say like, wow, like I said, like, oh man, what a fucking retard. And they're like, but now they know me as the guy that says retard. And if you said it, some of your listeners might be like, Scott, what are you doing?
I say it quite frequently, actually. So it's one of my favorite words. I have, if people have their own definitions and their own feelings about that word. I've been very public about mine. So
most of my friends fall in the category of retards.
Same. I'm a retard. So as long as you can call yourself one when you are, then I think it's okay to say. So look, Tyler, this has been fun. I just wanted to dig into Tyler and kind of what makes him tick on the back end, because I've never heard you really talk about any of that stuff, like kind of in that depth. I knew there was more to this. I know you've been the mastermind behind the podcast from the get go, and I also my visit there, kind of seeing what's up. When I walked into that room, just going, "Yep, this is pretty much what I expected." This is. These guys have been working really hard. You can tell where they've had to upgrade here and how they've changed things and how they're evolving. I know how much work that takes, and I know that this is not something you just kind of think about. This is something that keeps you up at night, and you're thinking about all the time and working on all the time. So I wanted to dig into it. So I appreciate you being open about it, man. And I also, for at risk of overdoing it, just I appreciate the show. I got to be honest, when I first started listening to it, I go, this is going to be another Bro Vet podcast. That was just my initial reaction. Because of the folks, the first couple episodes that I heard and the people that were on it. But as it evolved, and this is the encouragement I would give people, if all the Anti-Hero podcast is for the Tim Kennedy episodes and the Marcus Luttrell episodes and everything else, I encourage you to go listen to something from somebody that you have zero clue about on those episodes. Go to the people that don't have a podcast. Listen to the episodes that don't have a podcast. They're active or retired law enforcement officers or firefighters or whatever that have told their story. There are parents of. You guys have had parents of first responders that have been on. They've been lost in the line of duty. Same with veterans. There's so much there. There's quite a bit there, and I think I understand how people kind of get known for certain things, and while those are very popular episodes, it's not all Anti-Hero does. And I've made some really good connections through Anti-Hero, both that you guys have connected me directly with, and then just people I've reached out to as a result of hearing them on the show. Some of them have been on, and some of them haven't. And these are just folks that I got some insights from. I was able to reach out to, and they challenged me to think a little bit differently, and that's what I'm looking for in podcasting, is somebody that kind of makes my brain go, whoa. It pauses it for a second, and like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. I want to know more. And you guys aren't afraid to ask the hard questions. And it's refreshing. So anyway, man, just compliments to you and the successes that you've had. And thanks for putting out the content you do, because it's helped and it's inspired me. And so is this conversation.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, dude. It is. As you know, when you host a podcast, you just by nature, by the business, you don't talk about yourself other than just referring to a past experience to drive your point home. You never talk about yourself. So it's kind of weird.
It's weird being on the other side of it. I think it's the first thing I said when I sat down in the chair across you, because I'm not on a lot of podcasts. And I get it. But at the same time, like sitting on the other end and answering the questions and talking about yourself is a little bit weird. So I always appreciate when people do. Thanks for doing that for me today, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. I'll definitely be up in Cali. We'll do it again.
Yeah. We talked about this before. If you're out on the West Coast, don't you dare come to the West Coast or to California and not let me know you're coming. I'd love to host you in the seat across from me instead of having to do this thing through the interwebs. Take you out to dinner and show you around a little bit and be my guest. So look, man, best of luck to you. Keep doing the thing. Keep having fun. And if there's anything, I don't know what it would be, but if there's anything I can do to help you, the team, or any of the other folks that you got under your umbrella out there, don't ever hesitate to ask. It'd be my pleasure.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thank you.